I wonder what that man was thinking when he wrote how great thou art. I suppose the birds were singing and something stirred his heart, or possibly he gazed upon a star and asked the question, God, tell me who you are. He may have walked through a forest and heard someone call his name, like on that mountain years before, and it sounded much the same. And heaven knows how many other times that has to be what helped him pen those lines. Had he seen the lightning flash so that he could hardly speak? Was there something in the thunder that sounded so unique? When was the first time his soul began to sing? Was that gentle breeze the first nice day of spring? Was there a stream out by his house where he'd spend so many hours? When his thoughts turned to his wife, would he bring her back some flowers? Or in the stillness of those evenings on their porch, was it there he wrote that famous chorus? Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. If that man were here today, I wonder what he'd do. Would he climb up the ladder with all the goals he must pursue? I can't imagine he'd be living life like that. He wouldn't want to join the race and be a rat. His focus would be different. He'd feed the poor and honor God. He'd make his life a sacrifice without a second thought. I'm sure that he'd put most of us to shame. He'd have a mind that was in the proper frame. To the world he'd be a failure that only had a one-track mind. The things of God he'd savor, the rest he'd leave behind. If he were here in church today, he'd sit and cry. With him the modern theories wouldn't fly. He'd be all about old-fashioned. It's the only God he'd known. He hadn't learned it in some seminar. It came from when he prayed alone. Would he challenge every motive of our heart? Remember, he's the guy who wrote how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. I'd love to spend a day and let him tell me what he thought, and hear every special moment he'd ever had with God. If there's a present I would like on Christmas Day, I'd love to hear how someone like that man would pray. If he could preach in every church that our nation has this hour, would he scold us for our selfishness and remind us of God's power? If he told us to prepare for Judgment Day, would we listen to the words he had to say? Would he treat sports like religion, or just enjoy a game? Would Sunday be a day of worship, or would he say they're all the same? He'd live modest, and his banker wouldn't call. I'm not convinced he'd spend his time down at the mall. If he owned a TV set, the screen would fill with dust. I can't see him watching shows that are filled with greed and lust. I'm sure that he'd find better things to do, like writing down a song to speak to me and you. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. If we could rise from our slumber and look back in the past and hear again those voices that spoke on God's behalf, don't you think we'd be much wiser than we are? Maybe we should stop and gaze upon a star. Is there a bird outside your window? Why don't you listen to him sing? Or go and find a path to walk on the first nice day of spring. If you're not too busy, you could even stop and pray. I think that's what that man did back in his day. You could cancel some events that only really crowd your time. When you're passing by that church, do more than read the sign. Or climb a mountain and get down on your knees and get to know the one who made that gentle breeze. You see, it really is that simple. We've just made a big mistake. We thought that we could have the glitter and the God stuff we could fake. If more of us would just get wise to that, there'd be better songs on the CD rack, such as "Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to Thee. How great Thou art, how great Thou art." Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to Thee. How great